Over here at TTC, we've bought and tested a lot of, we'll call it generously rated products before, including everything from crazy lumens with flashlights, decibels with horns, and even volts with tasers. In the lawless world of the internet, there's nothing stopping a born yesterday brand, or heck even established brands lately, from slapping nearly impossible specs, sometimes totally impossible specs on products in order to have an edge over the last guy who listed one on the site, who may have already been flexing his creative writing skills on their features. So today, by the request of many viewers, we meet turbofan dusters. We bought several models that advertise an RPM level of 100,000 to 300,000 RPM and wind speeds of up to 268 miles per hour. These have been blowing up a bit on social media with impressive footage of them being used and seem aimed at replacing your canned compressor air bottle for less waste, and even claim to compare to just straight up compressed air blowguns. So let's see what they can do by measuring these things and see if we can find a few cool ones along the way for us to rank. In order of price, we have the Fresmol VCO18 for $26, which just so happens to also be the best-selling cordless fan duster on Amazon currently. This is more of a hairdryer style or size turbo duster blower, and it advertises a large 7,500 milliamp hour battery and 100,000 RPM. Now this is something they all love to do, say their RPM to imply their performance, but like a pencil air die grinder might be 55 to 60,000 RPM in real life, but not much air is coming out of one of these. Whereas a wind tunnel for F1 testing, these are 360 RPM and they deliver all of the air. You can see what I'm getting at here. Throw a much higher revving two-stroke weed eater into your pickup truck. It's not going to get you anywhere just for being higher RPM. That spec alone doesn't mean much by itself. Okay, now with all that said, after performance and use testing, we did snip these things apart, put a black mark on the impeller fin, and this one is making around 74, then 85, and up to 95 to 96,000 RPM. We were surprised by this. And I personally lost a bet. It's pretty cool as a standalone stat, but many of these are advertising 134 to 268 miles per hour. This one doesn't say, but it makes and shows some bold stuff. In this case, it puts out about 85 miles per hour, and with any attachment, that goes up to around 130 miles per hour of airspeed. How much of this air is coming out at that speed? Well, we'd say subjectively, it doesn't look or feel like a ton. Remember, I mentioned individual stats can be deceiving. Believe it or not, this is the top selling model, the best selling on Amazon. There's a lot of people who don't know what they're missing if they're reviewing just this duster and that's their only one. So how can it be both 130 miles per hour and, well, look like this? The answer is air volume or lack thereof. So we have out with our high-speed pitot tube also calibrated each duster's outlet diameter, which in this case is 0.736 inches, and then we can measure the amount of air it's pushing out, which here shows about 20 or so CFM. It goes above and below that, hangs around 20. For reference, common blowguns for compressed air systems like shop air can be around 20, but are often upwards of 30, 40, 45 CFM as well. And here we're maxing this out because of velocity reasons, as the blowgun itself exceeds the 180 to 185 miles per hour. We can read here by a lot, by the looks of things, by how easily it does it in comparison. So I'd say we're still in the hunt. Up next we have Yo Mile at around $30, another mini hairdryer size. All these fluctuate a lot in pricing and deals. We're just using basically what they cost a few weeks ago when we purchased them. This is a 120,000 RPM model, so 20% more of a mostly useless stat. Though we didn't have a lot of opportunities to check the RPM, we got it working long enough to check and see 78 miles per hour from it. But even though this was on a charger for half a day after we unpackaged it, it died off after this. So we charged it up all the way again to see 19-ish CFM before it would quit again and not stay in high. We had it working long enough to get a decibel reading from it. We'll go over those in a minute, but not so much luck with this thing. It gets a DNF. We can't keep it running. Which means up next we have the VC019 model from Fresmol again. I'll admit, didn't pay too much close attention to the brands. This looked different. It's their later model. A little bit more pricey though, and it's also 100,000 RPM and again, 7,500 milliamp hour battery. All of these first three hairdryer looking types have a push and hold for 3 seconds to start up And that feels even more annoying than it sounds. There's times you want to turn it on and then turn it off, and it makes you wait for that. It's kind of clunky. Let's see if we can get anything different out of this one, even though it has the same specs, as it appears to have the same impeller too, and a similar 97,000 RPM motor, maybe 1,000 RPM up, if anything. And we're seeing 80 miles per hour, which can reach as high as 154 miles per hour with the same type of attachment the last one had. That's not bad. Around 19 CFM, again, almost the same for this one. That little extra speed is noticeable in that it's better, not amazing, but does move some stuff around. It does sound not super great to your ear, like comparing it with the other one here, not amazing. We get 80.5 decibels from this guy 1 meter away in a not wide open area, which is where I think a lot of these would be used. But it is a particularly irritating pitch. This one wasn't the loudest on the day by the numbers, as it turns out, but makes you sort of wince at it the most, not wanting to hear it. Jumping up in price to $55 now, we have this model from, we're going to call this Duster since it says that right on the side, and it's the sort of angular shape and size I keep seeing in shorts and TikToks that are tagging us. We're from here on out into the more pocket-sized fan dusters. It does feel more appropriate, these type of things being this size. This is advertised as reaching 150,000 RPM, and it doesn't advertise a battery size. Again, this fine surgery we're doing here is after all the testing you're going to be seeing. Got to get in there to make a mark and read those RPMs, but that 150,000, it's more like 90 to 94,000 RPM. Okay, but what can it do with that 90 to 94,000 RPM? Turns out quite a lot. It makes about mid-50s with its just standard face wide open, and then with any nozzle as much as 143-ish miles per hour, which isn't crazy, but they also don't provide a super narrow nozzle to focus that down as much as some of the others. Calibrated to this opening, which is 1.14 inches, that makes 46 CFM, more than double any of the other previous models, and I imagine that's what you're paying for here, or at least with this specific model, a lot of them do look similar to this. So we have more than twice the air coming out per second, and that's able to displace more stuff more forcefully. Is it a compressed air blowgun? No, it's not one of those, but best so far. Taking another step up in price, we have the Fantic. Fantic seems to be getting more serious about things, not a no-name Amazon brand at this point, even had a booth this year at SEMA. As usual, they're offering a more sleek, more smooth, more premium packaged and feature-rich product here, but little of that stuff often ranks with what we measure. We like to quantify things. This is advertising 110,000 RPM with a 2600 milliamp hour battery for the first time. That sounds like a capacity I believe an 18650 could be by itself, and we'll be measuring all of those in a bit. This one's two clamshell halves must be glued together, and we couldn't access from the back, but 110,000 RPM, I guess that seems feasible. Let's see what kind of air she's putting out. So we're seeing about 45 miles per hour, and this one has quarter turn attachments, which taper way down, and that nets to an increase of a lot, around up to 155 miles per hour. That's pretty good. And for air volume, we're getting about 26 with this one. It's like the better Fresmol model, but smaller and more CFM basically. Can't say it totally blows my skirt up though. All right, in home stretch here, we're up to a $80 Wolf box. Sounds like a prehistoric ready-to-eat meal service that delivers to caves, but what you get instead is one of the few Duster models that look actually different and unique. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not. And what sounds like a very achievable 60 meters per second, they're saying 134 miles per hour. The top setting you have to hold down on the button to engage, and it's no joke. It feels like if it allowed you to take your finger off the button and not step down, it would sort of blast off. This is finally into that fun category, and maybe it will be useful too, but it's also just pretty cool. Like those short clips of this type of product we keep seeing. Yeah, we're not going to bury the lead here, it's peppy. It makes 90 miles per hour, it's just wide open with its face, and up to 162-ish with the nozzle, and with any nozzle, like a small one, it climbs above what any traditional pitot tube is going to register outside of Formula One, 185 plus miles per hour. I'd say that's pretty good and well above their stated 134. For CFM, it's also no slouch. Well, yeah, it crushes really there too. 70 CFM, nearly 3 times the last model with more airspeed. This is the type of thing you could film one of those TikTok clips with. It's got that type of performance, and You can even sort of go digging with it, as it turns out too. It's loud. It sounds like a bunch of rushing air to me. It's not particularly ear-piercing, but does measure much higher with 87.5 decibel. The Fantic, for instance, was just 77.5, and that Duster model even 80. So how much should something that does this type of task cost? I have no idea, but whatever your plans were, this is probably what you were envisioning, thinking of when you saw these things, or at least it's what I pictured in my head. All right, and last up we have what we're going to call the 300K model, because it's the only one bold enough to advertise 300,000 RPM. We paid $85 for it, and it's maxing out the numbers everywhere in every category here, also saying 10,000 milliamp hour battery inside of it, and it's not even that large. So does it make 300K? Ain't no way, no. But it does exceed what a digital RPM gauge can register here at 100,000, though it fluctuates around that, so I don't think it's much in excess of 100, maybe 110, 115 at best, because it dips below sometimes. Either way, RPM, as we've learned, doesn't mean all that much. This guy does say 120 meters per second, which is 268 miles per hour, and that'd be a lot. Luckily or unluckily, depending on how you see it, this one didn't max out our pitot tube. We're seeing about 170, 171, 172 miles per hour with, again, not the tiniest reducer, but it's the smallest one it came with. That's pretty impressive. We also get 42 and a half CFM. Not bad. And this one, because it would stay in high without your finger on the trigger, would try to leave orbit. You can see why the Wolf box doesn't allow you to do the same thing. This one is also impressive in person and in the hand, maybe not 300,000 RPM or 268 miles per hour impressive, but it'll do everything short of digging into the ground here. It moves a lot of stuff for something this size and weight. It looks and feels impressive. It's also quieter than the Wolf box, measuring in at 81 decibels here. Definitely the most performance per unit of sound model here in the bunch. That's good stuff. Which leaves us here. One last thing to briefly record for you here, their actual battery capacities. All these are USB-C and take around 1.5 amps. Some spike more near 2.5, but most of them spend most of their time at 1.5 amps. So all that's left really is their capacities, how much battery you're getting for your dollar here. After fully draining all of these two models advertised 7,500 milliamp hours. We got 5,500 milliamp hours out of each of them. Not bad, but also not 7,500. The Duster we measured at 3,750, and then the Fantic, they're either underselling that battery spec or the battery's in series, like most of these, and they're not totaling them together either way. 4,500 is what it took to take it to fully charged. All of these lasted about the same, just over half an hour or so, and then these two lasted longer. The Wolf box taking the honors there at just over an hour, 6,000 milliamp hour battery worth of charge, and the 300K model, we also got 6,000 milliamp hours and nearly longer runtime as this guy. They're each awarded points from first to last as such, with each test, first being best, and the ones that tested about the same get the same points. See past episodes for how that works, but essentially you want as few points as possible, which puts, with 10 points, in the number one spot, Wolf box. And that's even getting dinged here with the most points for sound level. Otherwise, it might be undefeated across the board. In the 300K model in second, a lot of fast and loose specs awarded to this one by the brand selling it, but in person, it does impress. And then the Fantic, and then the Duster. The Duster guy is probably at that level where you just start to feel like, oh, these probably didn't exist a couple years ago. These are definitely new. And then these two are a bit on an island of their own, a real can-like Duster replacement, and frankly, just pretty cool to use. Though their price separates them a bit too. With all the stats here, you can now better judge which those differences are worth it. Appreciate you joining us for this. We make episodes every Friday. Thanks for watching.